Welcome to the News Hour. We start with breaking news coming out of Gaza, where Al Jazeera's Gaza bureau chief, Wael Dahdouh's son, Hamza, has been killed in an Israeli strike, directly hitting the car that he was travelling in. While Al Dahdouh's wife, son, daughter and grandson were all killed in an Israeli airstrike that hit their house back in October. Also killed in the strike, Mustafa Thuraya, who'd worked for AFP news agency. Let's cross over to Hani Mahmoud, who joins us now from Rafah in southern Gaza. Hani, what more can you tell us about the attack on Hamza Dahdouh?
Yes, very devastating news indeed. We were just earlier hours this morning. We were in the tent, and it's just hard to imagine that he's gone now. But Hamza, with his colleague Mustafa Thuraya, worked for AFP, and another journalist, a colleague of Hamza and Mustafa, were out documenting the overnight attacks on the road that connects Khan Younis and Rafah when they were targeted by an airstrikes, and there was just a video circulating. We just looked at the video. We could not believe that we were looking at Hamza and his colleague, because in the earlier reports we reported about people in a car were targeted, and speculated that could be a displaced family coming from Khan Younis, or to our shock it was our colleague, and it's just very devastating to see that. Hamza is a photojournalist and been working with the team since the beginning of the war, along with Mustafa, who've been documenting all the tragedies and the destructions that caused by Israeli relentless airstrikes, but to this point, just nothing seems to be protecting anyone here. Not even the vest, not even the helmet, not even the job that they're doing. Very, very shocking indeed. We're still absorbing this.
Of course, Hani, we can hear it in your voice. It must be incredibly difficult when you see a friend and a colleague earlier in the day, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with the news that you have been. Obviously, Hamza had been dealing with the death of, obviously, very close members of his family for the past several weeks. How was he coping with that in the conversations he was having with you?
It was very difficult with him. Hamza had a great bond with his mother, particularly, and every once in a while he would be telling us about how much he misses his mom, and how much he wished if she was still alive, because he has so much to tell her, to talk to her about his life, his father's situations. He wanted someone to be next to him every time, whenever possible for him. Hamza was a very somehow discreet person who wouldn't open up to anyone unless he has built a good trust, because every time he would break and crying his heart out over the passing of his mother and his brother, his sister as well, and his sister's son, and the whole family, and he would be telling us how much void that it created in his life. Life has no taste anymore, because of he would describe when this war is over, how he would go home, and if the home is still standing, how would he go home, who would be checking on him, who would be asking about his favorite meal or favorite presents in special occasions. I mean, he would catalog all of these things that a person who enjoys a special bond with his family, particularly with his mother, would be talking about, and we would be try to talk him, because we know, like, if we are able to get him to closure with what happened, he would be much more stronger to accept the fact that it's already happening, and the best that he could be doing is to pray for them and be the good example his mom always wanted him to be, and never crossed our mind that he would end up in the same situation as his family and his siblings ended up with. And Our heart goes for his father, who has endured so much, not only his family member, but also the extended family, where 10 more of the extended family, the Dahdouh family, were killed as well. And also his colleague and co-worker, Samir Abu Daqqa, and other colleagues at Al Jazeera. Just hard to believe that this is happening again. Nothing seems to be protecting journalists and the job they're doing on the ground, documenting all of these atrocities and crimes committed by the Israeli military.
And of course, Hani, while you're speaking to me, we're seeing the very latest pictures of Wael at the side of his son's body, with other colleagues and friends trying to console, as you say, a heartbroken father who has lost a great deal and is one of hundreds of thousands across the Gaza Strip that has lost family members. You touched on the fact that, you know, there is no protection for journalists, there is no protection for anybody in Gaza right now, despite the title of safe zones given by the Israelis. How difficult is it, in your opinion, right now to even designate any area in Gaza a safe zone?
Oh, it's hard. Safe zones do not exist at all. They only exist in the Israeli military narratives. It's just something for publicity that they use, something that the Israeli military wanted to look good in front of foreign media platform, that they're doing everything possible, or because the U.S. has nicely asked them to not to kill civilians, and without putting the pressure that would have caused the practical impact or change the course of the way they conduct this war. It's just a way for them to look much better while committing the crime. There are no safe zones. We're reporting it from the vicinity of this hospital, and it's not safe. And within the past few weeks, we've seen how a sudden airstrikes took place within the vicinity, where shrapnel flew at a very high speed and hit the roof of our tent and almost killed one of our colleagues inside the tent. So it just, the whole narrative is false, is misleading and inaccurate, and it's fueled by a sentiment of genocide. When you hear an Israeli official, military official, describing an area like the central area as an overcrowded area full of terrorists, this is a justification, a pretext for whatever is going to happen next, which is already labeling and painting everyone as a terrorist, including children, women, and elderly civilians largely. So it's a justification for the way to kill them. Same thing happens to journalists. They're always labeled, they're always targeted and attacked, and it just happened to be their bad luck that there's some good journalists here in the Gaza Strip are covering their atrocities and the crimes taking place and showing them to the world. I think that's the fact that the Israeli military, and so many people's opinion here, that the fact they don't like that there's so much good journalism going on covering these details, tiny details of the world. They don't like this fact, and that's why journalists are under constant attack. This is not the first time. We've seen it, colleagues, their entire families wiped out.
And of course, again, pictures that we're seeing, the latest pictures of Wael, quite distraught, obviously, and one can imagine he'd be in that situation, having lost his son again, one of his sons and all of his children. Hani, you know, as you were talking to me, and our viewers would be wondering what that hum is, we've been describing that hum above your head for nigh on 3 months now, and it is an Israeli drone. It's surveying the area. They're incredibly threatening, day in, day out, 24 hours a day.
Yes, indeed. And I'm standing right now and hearing this drone. I'm quite scared. I'm quite scared because there is no terms to this war. There's nothing is going to stop any official, any soldier in the chain of command, because the one who killed a 3-year-old in a building with her family can do anything because someone in the chain of command thought it's okay. And now they think it's okay and it's fine just to target anyone, to kill anyone. The fact that this drone hasn't left the skies of this particular area is quite threatening and risky. And oftentimes we talk to ourselves like, is it really safe to be out here and doing these reports. And these are questions that we challenge ourselves, and we try to give a sensible answer to what we're doing. Eventually, we come to a conclusion this is part of the job that we're doing, and it has to be done, because otherwise the story won't be told. But there is a high risk involved in it, particularly with a drone that is either an attack drone or surveillance, and it can be both a surveillance aerial drone and at the same time an attack drones conducting aerial bombardment. That's what we see in the past few weeks here and in the central area and in the northern Gaza Strip, in Gaza City, everywhere. Every inch is risky, every inch is dangerous, and every inch there's a high possibility one can die. And given that this place is overcrowded and packed, a single airstrike, even with the smallest bomb, can cause large number of deaths, because we're looking at a sardine can right now. Everyone is packed in this area. The vast majority of the population has been squeezed and pushed into this small area.
Hani, just tell us a little bit more, because we expect now a funeral service to be conducted for Wael's son in a few hours' time. Burial space is incredibly difficult, and also getting to these new established cemeteries is also difficult, knowing there are snipers everywhere.
This formal burial procession do not exist since the beginning of the first week of the war. People haven't been able to conduct a formal, proper burial, unable to offer the last prayer, and boards are just doubly grieving for people. Not only the situations are quite risky, and people are losing their loved ones and relatives and children, but at the same time they're unable to mourn them properly, at least the mourning part where people can hold for the last time their loved one, their relatives, and say goodbye to them properly before they put them in the grave. And it's just the fact that there's no burial, formal, proper burial site, and for the past weeks people resorted to burying people on the sidewalk or in the middle of the road in those little islands, or in the courtyard of public facilities like hospitals and evacuation centers. And there are a great deal of stories of heartbreaking story of people who buried their loved ones in the back courtyard of the Shifa hospital or the Indonesian hospital, or in evacuation centers, and those who remained stranded in the war zone in Gaza northern part and in Khan Younis could not bury their father or mother or loved ones. They buried them in the backyard of their homes and waiting for this to settle in order to rest them in peace in a better place. But it's increasingly difficult. Even the kind of mass that someone would look at to participate in these processions is not permissible, given the difficulty of the situations, and for the most part it's only exclusive to family members, because it is risky to be in large gathering out in the public in either a cemetery or wherever where they decide to bury them. But as of now, we're not looking at a formal burial site. It's going to be somewhere temporary until they're able to move them to a formal burial site.
And these were strikes that obviously hit Wael's son early in the morning as such, but the strikes have continued through the night, haven't they?
Yes, overnight and early hours of this morning. In fact, what Hamza and his colleague were doing, they were at a site of an overnight attacks within the vicinity. They are documenting the destruction, the great deal of destruction that caused by the airstrikes, and talk to people who were around the vicinity of the area, displaced Palestinians, those who were pretty much scared of the situation, have been displaced more than one time, and to see what are their options right now to go, where to seek safety, where to seek refuge as the airstrikes continue. But they were at a site where more than 10 people were killed, displaced Palestinians inside residential homes, and in other areas as well. The number gone from 14 into now 18 in Khan Younis, for example, for one entire family. At the same time, a massacre was committed in Jabalia, Fallujah, in Fallujah area, and Abu Alba family of 60 people from one family. All women and its children and elderly were taken shelter in one of the residential homes when it was completely destroyed. And the number of people who are pulled from under the rubble as of now, 60 people, according to a source from the Indonesian hospital. Again, we're talking about a hospital that is not functioning, but at least they count the numbers of those who are being killed, and there's still more children, more women under the rubble. So all of this confirm the narrative that there is no single safe place in Gaza, including the empty northern part.
Obviously, Hani, when you move away from the live position that we see you at to go and do your reporting, as Wael's son would have done as well, there are certain precautions and safety measures that are always put in place as part of the safety protocols within the media industry. You have your flat jackets, which are also in theory, protect you from the front and back with big, very heavy metal plates. I've worn them myself and know exactly how heavy they are. If you're travelling in a car, what sort of identification do you have around that car, inside the car, on top of the car, that would have at least identified the car as a media car?
Yes. Well, we have a set of rules here before leaving the tent. You have to have as long as you are doing your job here, you have to wear your vest, you have to put your helmet, as well as if you go on a field, you have to be wearing your vest that says press, the one that has a protective material in it, as well as the car is labeled, it says a press and it says TV. Very, very visible to whoever is watching or whoever is monitoring your movement. So the fact that all of this was obvious to the drone or whoever conducted the strike, it's obvious that it was on purpose. It was done on purpose to send a message, to scare other journalists from doing their job. And that's the outcome, that the only possible outcome we're looking at. People were in a car, 3 journalists. They had the car labeled by a TV and press. They wore their vest. They had all of their safety gear, equipment on. Everything was done based on how the book says, pretty much following the rules. Just that did not save them from doing that. And I mean, we've seen the example with Samir Abu Dahdouh when he was reporting and covering. He had all of his safety gear on, but that also did not protect him. That doesn't say that those gears are not required or they're not doing the job, but at least they're given the identification. Now, the problem is when the other side recognize you as a journalist, you're doing your job, and yet decide to go ahead with the strike and push the button and put an end to your life. That's the problem. The problem is not in the identification. The problem is how you are perceived by the Israeli military.
And how are journalists from Al Jazeera perceived? I suppose it is the question we have to ask, because if Wael's family have been targeted, and we know that our cameraman from our sister channel from Arabic was also killed just a few days ago, it does raise questions, doesn't it, about where we stand as an organisation trying to tell the story on the ground, one of the very few that can tell it to the international audience.
Yes, well, good journalism, good reporting, authentic and factual reporting is a threat to Netanyahu, a threat to his government, a threat to the Israeli military, who is heavily reliant on Western media platforms and telling their side of the story, their narratives, and pretty much push for that narrative over and over, and largely ignores the plight of Palestinians under these heavy bombs. That's the problem. So when you offer good journalism, you are a target, because you uncover what the world largely hasn't heard in years about what's going on. I mean, the fact that it's always being labeled as the bad guys, the terrorists, the one who have hate, the one who don't like Jews, the one, all of this, and all of a sudden, good journalism and reporting showing the other side of the story, that in fact this is not what is happening. The label is false. The narrative is inaccurate. I think that's where it's becoming threatening. And unfortunately, people pay a heavy price for telling a true story.
How difficult is it for you, Hani, to actually understand the fact that, as the days progress, you hear more and more news, not just about people in Gaza, across the whole Strip, suffering so very badly, but then, when you hear news of somebody that you know so very well, and you have to try and impart this news as you are to me and to our audience in a completely impartial way to explain the grief that really Wael is feeling, just as a father. He's like thousands of fathers in Gaza right now.
Indeed, and just we're feeling we're in the same position. We have families, we have children, and we constantly worry about their safety, their livelihood, and we're seeing what's happening to Wael, his family, and the fact that this is third time dealing with a tragedy of a family member, a close family member. Is just it makes the whole situation even worse. Again, the level of fear is great, the risk is greater. Are we threatened? Yes, we are threatened, and we know we are at risk. We know we are a target. We know we are at any moment we could. And I'm going to let you into something. I mean, we had this conversation, me and my family, and we talked about if something happened, hey, this is what you need to be doing, because it's imminent. You can't, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're leaving your home and coming to the tent safe. You don't know if you're going back safe. You don't know what's going to happen if you are going on a field work like what Hamza and his colleague were doing at earlier hours of this morning. But it's a real thing. It's not something that we brag about or something that we were happy to show, but it's a real danger, real risk, real life-threatening situations taking place every minute of our life, and this is the truth. And it happens to be this way. It happens to be in the most difficult situations ever, and that's the pressure that we have, because between reports constantly, word, if it's not you, it could be my family, it could be a journalist being punished by getting his family targeted, like what happened with Mu'min Ashrafi, our colleague from Al Jazeera, where his entire family, more than 21 members of his family, including his parents and his grandparents, were killed, and other children and women. Muhammad Abul Qumsan, an audio engineer who his family was targeted, the entire family as well, and so on. It's either the journalist becoming the target, or the family, they are the target to punish the journalist and to deter them from doing their job. And that's the war on all levels. The level of killing, the kind of tragedy created, all to deter Palestinians to dare saying something anti-occupation or anti-war or any of that sort.
Just stay there for a moment, Hani. Let me just let our viewers understand the pictures that they're actually seeing right now here on Al Jazeera. If you are joining us here, it's 13:25 GMT. Sorry, 10:25 GMT. And the breaking news that we're letting you know about is that the son of Wael Dahdouh, our bureau chief of Al Jazeera in Gaza, has lost his son due to an Israeli shelling of the car that his son and at least two other journalists were travelling in as they were reporting on an overnight story within the Gaza Strip. Wael Dahdouh, our bureau chief's family, had also been targeted just several weeks ago. His wife and several members of his close family had been killed. A huge tragedy for him. And for the Bureau. The pictures that you're seeing there are of him identifying his son's body. It will be taken for burial shortly. These are the latest pictures coming into, as I'm sure you can imagine. It's always difficult to get live pictures of those sorts of incidents straight away. We were speaking to Hani Mahmoud, our correspondent, who's also been filling us in on the background to Hamza, Hani's friend, Wael's son. working for the AFP news agency. For those viewers who are just joining us, Hani, could you just let them know again why Hamza was in that car and what was the story that he was reporting on?
Yes, we all know Rafah is becoming increasingly dangerous and risky, not only for local residents, but also for displaced families who've been evacuating for the past few weeks, coming all to Rafah. Rafah is becoming packed, overcrowded, with so many people sleeping either on the sidewalk or in evacuation centers, or end up homeless because the area is running out of space. And the fact that Rafah designated as a safe area for people, yet the Israeli military conducting these massive, relentless airstrikes, and it's been equally, if we compare Rafah to other parts of the Gaza Strip, it's been equally bombed, and a large number of people have been killed, and tragically the vast majority of those who are killed happen to be displaced Palestinians, just summoning into the Israeli narrative of safe zone, just put a huge hole in it that is inaccurate, is misleading, and very contradictory to what's going on the ground. But Hamza and his colleagues were doing field work, documenting the level of destruction that was caused by an overnight airstrike that targeted 2 residential homes near the road that connects Khan Younis city with Rafah. And it just, every airstrike has an aftermath. It's not only causing a great deal of damage to and destroy the targeted home, but also it causes severe damage to the surrounding area. If we count 5 to 7 residential homes become unlivable, unsuitable for people to stay in, and that's the kind of documentation that we are, in our work, we're trying to cover, to see that it's not about just the house, but the greater deal of damage, to the point that it become increasingly consistent with the Israeli narrative of making Gaza uninhabitable, create conditions that life becomes impossible for people to even think of going back or staying here when the war is over. All of this part of what's going on. So they are documenting these crimes and caused by the destruction, more displacement, more people are killed, more people under the rubbles when they were targeted, and their work they put an end to their work, because that the kind of documentation that for the Israeli military shouldn't be on TV, shouldn't be going to media, because it's harmful to them. It's harmful for the narrative, because soon enough they're losing the credibility of the many allegations that are being thrown, and they go unchallenged. That's the problem.
Hani, do stay with us. We'll be back with you shortly in Rafah.